Hello, and welcome back to our third recap video going over our journey through the low tier Swiss rounds. This video we're going to be looking at weeks 5 and 6, and you'll see on the opposite side we did have another Braviary matchup, so I did actually look into the things it could do this time. We're also going up against yet another Clodsire, and it's not the last one we'll face. And we also have some new faces in Eruption, Typhlosion, as well as Tinkaton and Rotom, who can be very annoying. So, looking at this matchup, I noticed that my opponent's Braviary was the Psychic Terra type, so I know it was going to be going for those adaptability Psychic type moves, so I knew I needed to keep Grimmsnarl alive in the back for it. We do get a little unfortunate turn 1. We miss the burn, kind of throw away Miss Magius immediately. And that's kind of one of two lessons of this battle. I guess I didn't learn too much from this one. First lesson that really came to me was giving up the win cons that aren't as useful as you thought they would be. So my Mismagius was kind of prepped to deal with the mons he had in the back or to deal with Clodsire of certain sets. And I just ended up thinking it was the most expendable Pokemon, so I ended up leading with it and pretty much throwing it away, trying to get a burn on the Cyclozar because I thought that would be useful. We didn't get the burn, so we gave it up for nothing, and we started this match in an immediate 5v6. So my opponent actually tricks me a Scarf on Dunsparce, and I totally forget this later in the battle. So not looking great, but we do take out the Rotom, which is super annoying for a lot of our members, especially for a Gallade trying to lock into a fighting type move. And since our Dunsparce is choice, it doesn't want to lock into a Headbutt as long as there's a Ghost type around. So getting rid of Rotom so early made it better for our Dunsparce in-game. So versus this opponent, I actually had a lot of trouble dealing with the Tinkaton. I thought it dealt with quite a few of my mons actually. It was very annoying and I couldn't really one-shot it with anything. So my best plan into it was actually a Eviolite Magnet Pull Magneton. I really didn't think he would want to run Shed Shell. So I thought being able to trap it in would be the best. And this Magneton was designed to 1v1 any Tinkaton that didn't know both Knock Off and Brick Break. Unfortunately, I have a Grimmsnarl in the back, so the odds of it knowing Brick Break were very likely. But I could at least weaken it enough that anything would be able to knock it out, and I do get a lucky paralysis at the end. Which kind of leads me into the second lesson I had for this battle, which is your opponent's disruption and ways to prevent it. So, as you can see by my opponent's team, they have a lot of obnoxious disruption and statuses. So they have Encore on Tinkaton as well as Thunderwave. They've got the Will-O-Wisp Rotom. They've got the Toxicking Clodsire. They had a Leech Seeding Wo-Chen that they didn't decide to bring to this matchup. So they had a lot of ways to just whittle down my Pokemon and make them all very easy targets for things like this Eruption Typhlosion, as well as the Terra Psychic Braviary. So I had to bring a few things to try to prevent that. So that Gallade that just dropped was Lumberry to deal with the statuses. We have the Magneton, who's immune to Paralysis and Toxic, and was Magnetized to deal with the Clodsire. There was a substitute Mismagius, and there's a Resto Chesto Grimmsnarl with Bulk Up. So we had to bring so many things in this match just to prevent him from statusing everything. We also had our Dunsparce, which was Terra Fire, because not only was that really good coverage into his team, but I noticed that Terra Fire prevented us from getting burned, so we were able to clean up these Pokemon. And this was just lucky for me. So this Dunsparce with a Scarf on it hits one base speed higher than a Braviary Hisui at max speed that's not Scarfed. So we got really lucky, got two Headbutt flinches on the Braviary, but like I said earlier, our Grimmsnarl was kind of designed to deal with Braviary, so if we hadn't gotten those flinches, Grimmsnarl probably would have 1v1'd it as long as we didn't get flinched in return by the air slashes. But the odds of that were lower, so we were able to clean up this match with a Drain Punch, take out the Cyclozar, and are now at 4-1. And just like that, we are on to week 6, and our opponent, Kingstonia. This is our first time bringing Toadscool to the battle, and I'll just go ahead, hit play, and start talking about Toadscool. And our first lesson is, even with your low tiers, even with your one pointers, draft things that make sense. Draft low tier Pokemon that are useful. I've noticed a lot of people, when they have that 1 point left, just grab something random, something that doesn't benefit their team. So when I was looking at my draft and everyone else's in this, I noticed there were a lot of electric types with shallow move pools, things like Sandy Shocks and Jolteon, that didn't really have a good way around ground types in general, really. And so I thought Toad School was a really good bring to this match because it completely walled out Sandy Shocks and Jolteon. Now, my opponent's Terra Captain this week is actually the Jolteon, and it is Terra Grass. That's a recurring theme. Even though my team is only one grass weakness in Gastrodon, Gastrodon walls a surprising number of threats in low tier. So people are being forced to bring Terra types that aren't necessarily the best for them, but they beat the one specific answer to that Pokemon. So I've noticed this and Volcanion both brought Terra Grass versus me, specifically for Gastrodon. And that's kind of the pro and con of 8mon, is you can prep for very specific Pokemon instead of kind of prepping for an overarching opposing team. So the first part of this battle is pretty slow. It's just my Grimmsnarl and Toadskull slugging it out with his Sandy Shocks, his Decidueye, and his Honchkrow. Just seeing who can take the KOs first. His answer to Toadskull is obviously always going to be this Decidueye, because not only does it threaten me with a lot of physical damage if it is physical, but it also spin blocks and is immune to Spore, so it's just a really good switch in. But that's kind of why I put Foul Play on it. To catch the switch in, do 60% when it comes in is really good. Something I didn't know until later is that Honchkrow was scarfed, so there was a non-zero chance that it actually outsped my Gallade, even though I believe my Gallade was also scarfed this week. It was. It wasn't necessarily faster than Honchkrow. I think there was a small margin where it might have been slower. So we do see our opponent has a win con in Tauros. Tauros Aqua was very hard for me to deal with. So the first answer to it was a Rindo Berry Gastrodon with Clear Smog, which is the reason I brought Toadskull. So Gastrodon didn't have to worry about the electric types. So the Trailblaze does still knock me out. He does still get +2 speed. But the second and most important lesson to me in draft lately has been play off of your guarantees. So Talonflame, when it's at max health, is guaranteed to go first, to go in its priority bracket with Gale Wings. So right there, with Heavy Duty Boots, I was guaranteed to not take hazard damage. And because of that, I knew that I could always revenge the Tauros if it didn't have a substitute up, and if it wasn't like extremely healthy and had Aqua Jet. So I knew that I would always live in Aqua Jet, always take it out with Brave Bird, and always hit it before it was able to hit me with something like a Wave Crash. So that was that play. If he had switched out the Tauros there, this would have been honestly a very different game. But now we see this is one of Dunsparce's less useful games. I had to burn it with that agility into Ice Beam to get rid of the Jolteon substitute so that I could then revenge it with Scarfed Gallade. He does make a good switch, but I had to lock into Sacred Sword. I thought it was better to force in the Scyther than something like the Honchkrow. And things are looking kind of dire at the end here. It's a 2v3, but we do still have a Scarfed Gallade, and we do still have a non-zero health Talonflame, which is nice. We can lock into Ice Punch pretty freely, but I do know that won't knock out Scyther. So I go into Talonflame, live the Trailblaze. I go for... He goes first, so he's pretty fast. He's still got some investment. My Brave Bird one-shots him. He says in the comments that it was a roll if I was adamant. But I was jolly, and it still knocked him out. So I believe that that was not a roll, or it was a roll in my favor, because on my calcs, if he wasn't Eviolite, then it always knocked out, and if he was Eviolite, then it never knocked out. So I'm pretty confident that it was not Eviolite. But anyway, we were able to clean up the game pretty well with Gallade at the end. Very close match, very good opponent, and we are now 5-1. Kills are on the screen. We are getting toward the end of it. We've got 2 more big battles to go. We have to play someone at the 5-1 bracket, and we have to play someone after that, trying to get to top tier. So we'll see you in the next one.